rejoice to see that fountain in his day. And there may I, though violently, wash all my sins away, wash all my sins away. Since by faith I saw the stream that flowing wounds sublime, redeeming love has been my theme and shall be till I die, and shall be till I die, and shall be till I die. Redeeming love has been my theme and shall be till I die. Wash all my sins away. Wash all my sins away. Redeeming love has been my theme and shall be till I die.
Ron, we're going to start at 10:05, Ron, okay? Maybe you could put the live stream on or something so they know, okay?
Precious Redeemer and friend, who would have thought that a lamb could rescue the souls of men? Oh, you rescue the souls of men. Counselor, comforter, keeper, Spirit we long to embrace. You offer hope when our hearts have hopelessly lost our way. Oh, we've hopelessly lost the way. You are the one that we praise. Oh Lord, my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands hath made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe display. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my...
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's good to be here today and welcome everyone to this very special celebration of life service for a very beloved and special man, Nick Bonifacio. We are honored to host this service today here at Bethesda Full Gospel Church. It's so wonderful to see some old friends. And Tony, I heard there's a pickup basketball game going on at the Elders Club. You want to go show those rookies what a basketball game looks like? You ready to go? I'm Sam Chifa, and I'm the senior pastor here at Bethesda for coming up on my 40th year. And most of you Butler Mitchell guys from the 50s and 60s know me as Sammy Chifa. Just like Nick and many of you here today, I'm a product of the west side of Buffalo, and I too grew up at the Butler Mitchell Boys Club on Massachusetts Avenue. Played on a lot of baseball and basketball teams at the club, and some of my fondest memories of my childhood was being coached by Carmen Battaglia, Ron Taylor, and Nate Blitz. One of those baseball teams back in the summer of 1959 went on to play a Kiwanis League state championship game at the iconic Doubleday Field in Cooperstown, New York, against an all-star team from Staten Island. Nick Bonifacio and I were teammates on that great Butler Mitchell team. I was 12 years old, and Nick was 11. And let me just say this. We beat the living daylights out of that team from Staten Island. They didn't stand a chance against the boys from the west side of Buffalo and the Butler Mitchell Boys Club. But this morning we remember Nick, and we mourn his passing, and we grieve the fact that he is no longer here with us. We most certainly do. And we all need to take time to grieve in our own personal way for the loss of our loved one and our friend, Nick. But today is also a celebration of life well lived. Nick's legacy is something that will live on in our hearts and our minds forever. His service to the youth of Buffalo and the countless number of lives that were transformed because of his unquestionable love and concern for them is unmatched. At this morning's service, there will be many smiles on faces, and I'm sure many tears shed for this great man, because we all have been blessed to have known this wonderful servant of servants and Butler Mitchell legend, Nick Bonifacio. So let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, as we gather to remember and celebrate the life of Nick Bonifacio, may we find comfort in the cherished memories we hold dear. Let these memories be a source of strength, reminding us of the love and joy we shared. We are grateful for the time we had together, for the countless moments that we have shaped our lives, and for the profound impact that they had on all who knew Nick. We pray for strength the strength to carry on this legacy forward with grace and gratitude. And we pray this in the matchless name of Jesus Christ the Lord. Amen. I would like now to introduce to you a very dear and old friend of over 60 years, my Lafayette High School Romeo brother, Bob Carnavelli, along with Chris Del Prince, will bring today's celebration of life service.
First of all, I'd like to thank Pastor Sam for volunteering this beautiful facility for the for next service. Sam has been a true friend of everybody on the west side that we grew up together and played many, many years of sports together. We were teammates at Lafayette High School, basketball, baseball, and thank you. He disappeared on me. Thank you very much, Sam, for doing what you're doing. First of all, I'd like to introduce at this time Nick's brother Joe and his family, who are here to cherish the memory of Nick also. Thank you so much to everyone.
Also, I just want to say Sam left a piece out of the baseball. He was the youngest guy that did a home run. What was it, 325 yards or something like that? So, all right. Listen, we want to take you through Nick's legacy. And we're here with two different perspectives. One being a friend of Nick that played ball with him, coached with him, and then myself as one of Nick's kids.
At the beginning, Nick is 1 year younger than me. He was born in 1948. Going to the Butler Mitchell days, at 1959, Sam mentioned Nick was a very integral part of that Butler Mitchell Boys Club team that won the championship in Cooperstown. Nick was a great pitcher and catcher in those days. Also in '59, Nick and one of his best friends, Rich Peterson, became game room aides at the club. In 1962, Joe Biondolillo, we all lovingly know him as Joe By, hired Nick to hang coats at the Butler. Those of you that went there remember, there was a coat room there was a counter with a coat room, and there was always somebody there to check your coat. You had to check your coat. Joe By also allowed Nick to, believe it or not, to sell hot dogs at the club. On a Saturday, there could be anywhere from 300 to 500 kids that would be through the club on a Saturday morning and a Saturday afternoon. And Nick sold hot dogs for 25 cents at a record pace. He increased the sales to 240 from 10 to 1. And then he'd close up and go in the gym and play a basketball game. In '56, Nick graduated from Hutch Tech. At the same year, he became a game room supervisor, and guess who took over the hot dog sales? His brother Joe. An opening to be full-time unit director at Virginia Street opened up, and Nick was paid the tremendous amount of 95 cents an hour. He went to work. He had applied to go to University of Buffalo. When he got the job offer, he tore up his college application and went to work. In 1966, Joe By and Paul Masana, among others, started the Butler Mitchell Alumni Association.
Just so you know, Nick had joined the Butler Mitchell in 1956. But in 1967, Paul Masana approached Nick and said, "You're doing a great job, kid, but you got to go to college and get your degree." So Nick went to school until 3 p.m. He rushed back to work to get to the club at 3:30 to 9:30. He took up physical education. He worked hard in school, and he also attended summer school so he can graduate 3 years, which he accomplished. 1969, Nick was asked to return to the Massachusetts club to become the program director with an annual salary of $5,000. 1970 to 71, there was a big merger and reorganization of the boys club, causing Joe By to leave and work at corporate level, allowing Nick to hire his own staff, at which he picked Paul Fitzgerald, Bobby Carnavelli, Jim Peepers, Master de Casa, Ray Spaziano, and Bob Reeves. Nick was asked to be the unit director and had the best teachers and leaders like Nate Bliss, Nick Mortellaro, Ed Lazaro. They're all here today. He got a raise. He made $6,000 a year now. 1972, membership of the club reached 1,000 kids. Nick ran the club for 13 years. 1985, Nick left the Butler Mitchell, and Gary Krasinski, Gary Kraz we call him, took over. Nick took a job at Rich Products for a year, and he got laid off. Nick went to work for the Ganseys, running the restaurant and the bar. In 1988, after Gary Kraz left to go to Towns Boys Club, Nick returned to the Butler as a unit director until 1997. In 1997, Nick went to work for Mayor Mazziello, who's here today, in the Parks, Buffalo Parks and Rec Department, working with his friend here, Bob Carnavelli, with various duties. 1999, Nick made a significant decision to leave his city job and run for councilman of the Niagara District. Nick proceeded to win 2 4-year terms. 2008, after 8 years in the council, Nick retired to take care of his wonderful mother, Ruth, who passed away in 2010. 2013, the alumni decided to purchase a property to use as our clubhouse and for an investment. As treasurer, Nick volunteered much of his time, helped facilitate the alumni members to purchase the building, our new home at 2840 Bauk Street, right here in the city of Tonawanda.
Now we get to the important parts. In Nick's life, one of the important parts was sports. Nick's coaching, playing, officiating, organizing, and administrating is legendary in Western New York sports. Nick coached all the sports at the Butler, including all age groups from age 8 to 16. He often coached 4 or 5 teams at the same time during the same season, like Police Athletic League, Interclub, Muni Baseball, and etc., AAABA, and other sports. Nick was a very good athlete in school and as an adult. He played baseball, basketball, football, and golf. Nick also made himself into one of the finest golfers in Western New York. Oftentimes, Nick played in tournaments as a scratch golfer, meaning little or no handicap. Nick was a longtime high school and collegiate umpire. When asked to, Nick umpired some of the Bison games at Pilot Field if they were short an umpire for one reason or another. Also, Nick was instrumental in reviving the legendary Silver Hoops All-Star High School basketball game in 1999. That's where the Buffalo Public School all-high team would play the Monsignor Martin Catholic All-Stars. That tournament, that All-Star game had ended in 1962, and one of our treasured alumni members, Joe Latempio, played in that last game in 62, and it was dormant for 37 years until Nick and the committee revived it. Community service. Nick spent 8 years in the Buffalo Common Council, served as a board of director for the West Side Community Center, board of director for the Police Athletic League. Nick was a point person, if you remember back when we thought we were going to have a new Peace Bridge, which never happened. But Nick worked his tail off representing West Side property owners so they would not be taken advantage of. The Peace Bridge Authority was going to take a lot of property and probably not pay what they should have paid, and Nick fought for those people. In addition, before his death in the past year or so, those of you that have read in the paper know about the expansion in the total reconstruction of LaSalle Park. Ralph Wilson's foundation gave the city of Buffalo over $100 million for that park, and Nick was an advisor for the locations of the playing fields. We were also, when both of us worked for parks, I didn't have it written down, but I want to remember this, when Delaware Park was totally ripped up in, I believe it was around 1995 or so, some of the playing fields, well, all of the fields were ripped up and new fields were put in. And if it wasn't for Nick, maybe with a little help from me, the diamonds were all in the wrong directions. With all respect to landscape architects, they had no idea what they were doing. You had a right fielder on diamond 1, 10 feet away from the third base coach on diamond 2. And we told them, if you want to get somebody killed, getting hit by a line drive, you better move this field. So we tilted the fields like 5 degrees in opposite directions, and they were fine. That those fields would have put in wrong for much, maybe Mayor Maciel remembers that time, because Delaware was, if you remember, was totally ripped up in that whole corner of the park, and it was beautiful when it was done. If I can get through this, I'd be happy to do it. These are personal remembrances. Nick was everybody's friend. When we go back in time, we have to smile about all the good times. Nick was always there for everybody in his life, especially his Butler kids. I've actually, through the years, have come across a number of adult women who went to the Butler after it became the Boys and Girls Club. It became co-ed. Every one of them told me how important Nick was for them as they spent time at the club. It was a place they felt safe in a rough neighborhood. And Nick was an advisor and surrogate father they must have needed. So many of those boys and girls loved Nick. As young adults, Nick could always be counted on to be by your side and cover your back. He was afraid of nothing. We played ball together, partied together, worked together, and we'll always cherish those good times. Also, as my sons were born, Nick created a nickname for each of them. Tiger and Duke were some of them. Memories of visiting, if I have the address correct, 311 and a half 14th Street where they got the half from, I don't know, but I think it was because the house was in the back. Right, Joe? Bringing my toddlers to see Mrs. B. In our middle ages, many of us lost a little contact with each other due to family and work commitments, but our friendship never wavered. It, in fact, got stronger with our commitment to the Butler Mitchell Club and the Alumni Association. Again, those memories will last forever. We played so many sports together that it gave us such a sense of friendship and camaraderie. None of us wanted to get old, so we played our hearts out. Nobody played harder with so much passion than Nick. He was tenacious with that indomitable spirit and will to compete, succeed, and win at anything he set his mind to. He was fearless and one of the toughest players in all the sports we played. We coached together for many, many years, and those were some of the fondest memories of our experiences together. Wonderful memories of many championships and a few disappointments. Nick could coach just about any sport you could imagine. He was an excellent teacher in sports and also in life. Our young people loved playing for Nick as he cared very much for all of them. In our later years, we may have even grown closer. We could often have conversations about anything. Those of you that stayed close with Nick, I remember visiting him at that incredible garden in his backyard and marvel at his unbelievable determination and energy in making that garden into an oasis in a sometimes bleak neighborhood. He was so proud of his ponds with those waterfalls and beautiful, huge goldfish. His vegetable gardens were amazing, and many of us left his yard carrying tomatoes, zucchini, and other things that Nick demanded we take home. In conclusion, we then started to fall into some health problems that created problems for all of us. His incredible determination and will to fight his unfortunate health issues was amazing to watch. But at the same time, it was typical of Nick to be very concerned about our own illnesses and injuries. What an amazing friend and companion in life. When I visited Nick at the hospitals, we used to try to communicate with hand signals, winking of eyes, and nodding his head. He would give me a thumbs up. We always ended our visits by telling each other that we love you. Nick never, ever gave up and fought a courageous fight to the end. I will always cherish Nick being in my life. He will remain in our hearts forever.
From the perspective of being one of Nick's kids, I'd like to explain the Buffalo or the Butler Mitchell tradition and camaraderie. Growing up without a father, Nick provided the sort of guidance and cultivations that fathers should. He offered a safe space, discipline, and structure, taught us about sports, teamwork, respect, and the importance of helping others. I enjoyed going to the Butler every day, which kept me off the streets. That was the tradition. Despite the small building, he managed to engage several hundred kids at any given Saturday with activities like basketball, hockey, archery, dodgeball, boxing, bumper pool, ping pong, arts and craft, just to name a few. I always looked forward to the holiday parties, Christmas time with Santa and getting a gift, the Halloween and the Easter parties. In the summertime, we would spend weeks at Beaver Island State Park, participating in numerous activities and swimming. Annually, we had an awards dinner where Nick recognized our accomplishments, helping to build our personal confidence. One of the most memorable activities was our annual camping trip to Allegheny State Park. This experience opened my mind to the world beyond the streets. As I grew into adulthood and found success, I owe most of it to Nick. The camping experience left a profound effect on me. I was inspired to bring back the Butler tradition and kept Nick's dream alive. In 2000, I started the City Kids Summer Camp program. For 22 years, we have been taking 100 inner-city kids camping, providing the same transformative experience that I and many others benefited from. I'm going to tell a story about the camp. I remember one time he took us on a hike, and we kept walking and walking for hours and hours. Are we lost, Nick? No, we're not lost. He says, you see the tree here? You see the markers on the tree? Those are markers. We're okay. And we kept going, and John Hall, Dr. John Hall, wanted to go on that trip. And I remember Nick picking him up, putting him on his shoulders many times. John was tripping, so he said, come here. He put him up on the shoulders. Now it's kind of getting dark. Nick, are you sure we're not lost? No, we're okay. We're following this. Well, finally, they found a house. Nick found a house. He walked up to the house, told them that we were lost. They contacted our camp, and they came with the bus to pick us up. And you know what those markers were? They were the divider of New York State and Pennsylvania. My story is just one of thousands of kids that Nick impacted, and many of them are here today. I had the opportunity to speak when he was awarded the Man of the Year in 2007, and I want to read a piece from that speech. Father's Day is a few days away, and if there was truly justice in this world, a mail truck would be pulling up at Nick's door, delivering thousands of Father's Day cards from all over the country. For those of you that think he was never blessed with his own children, you're dead wrong. Nick, you will sorely be missed, but the impact you had on us all will never be forgotten. You followed your mentors, you kept the tradition and the camaraderie like no other. I will always strive in life to live the way you did, taught us, and continue to help others as you did every day. Nick is a West Side legend and was a servant second to none. We wanted to do something special as a real tribute to Nick. We created this special video, which we know will put a smile on your face and maybe a tear in your eye as you enjoy watching this.
The club was a focal point of the neighborhood. We still had close to 900 members in 1997 when I left. 60s, 70s, and 80s, you went to the club 5-6 days a week. We worked 6 days a week. Since the tradition was so rock solid, everything seemed to flow every day. Tradition that was set from everybody before me, during my tenure, and you got guys like Joe Bai, Paul Masana, and Nate Bliss, and Al Ganeri, and Carmen Battaglia, and part-time workers like Paul Fitzgerald, and Roy Mantle, and Joe Nazo. Peepers, I mean, they set the example. Growing up, they were our mentors. We were blessed to have them. That was our tradition. In 1962, Joe Bai offered me, I was working hanging coats in 1962. And then Joe Bai offered me to sell hot dogs on a Saturday afternoon. We would average anywhere between 300 and 500 kids on a Saturday. And I was selling hot dogs at a record pace, and I sold 240 hot dogs between 10 and 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Made a pretty good buck. But me and Joe, our life was at the club, so we worked. During the blizzard of '77, You couldn't drive or walk for 2 weeks on the west side. Cars were covered with snow. Joe By and I would walk to the club and open up the club 3-4 days after the blizzard of '77. When kids had to go to 12-foot snowbanks to come into the club.
Right.
We didn't get our big numbers, but the neighborhood kids came to the club, played pool. They liked it because there wasn't as many kids.
Right.
And they didn't have to call winners and wait 6 times before they got on the table.
Right.
You know, some kids liked that.
Yeah.
Some kids didn't like the crowd. Other kids, they strived off the crowd. They wanted to be around their friends. Because of tradition.
Yeah.
We kept the tradition up. You got to run programs for kids. Kids like to be challenged. When I started working at the club, the late 60s, Ward was in charge of camping and education in Port Laurel. And he started a camp program in 1970. Boy, he would take 10 kids from each club and have 50 kids out there at Allegheny State Park. We had cedar workers, we had adults, we had alumni guys come with their wives. It was like a family type experience at camp. At that time, I think I didn't realize what I missed. So I came back in '88 as the director of the club. And I worked another 12 or 15 years before I decided to leave the club in 1997. The club was a lifetime experience for a worker and for those that came. It was unique. It'll never be duplicated. Never.
Who would ever think this service would be Nick talking, huh? At this time, I would like to ask our Buffalo Mayor, Byron Brown, to come up and say a few words.
Let's give Chris and Bob another round of applause. It is truly an honor to join all of you today to celebrate the impactful life of a man of great character, Nick Bonifacio. I have to tell you, it's a little strange speaking before Mayor Masiello. I call him the tall mayor, and he calls me the young mayor. And even to this day, Mayor Masiello usually still speaks first. But charge it to the people that put together the program and not me, Mayor Masiello. I first met Nick in 1999 when we served on the Buffalo Common Council together. But before that time, as you all well know, Nick already had a well-deserved and well-earned reputation as a champion for children and youth, as a local sports legend, and I really was excited to serve with Nick on the city council. He was a dependable member of the council. He worked hard. He did his homework. He was decisive. He was not afraid to make tough decisions. And he fought for the betterment of the West Side, to improve quality of life, to eliminate drugs and crime on the west side of Buffalo and across the entire city of Buffalo. He served as chair of the Common Council Police Reorganization Committee. And as you know, we have gone through an era where people talked about defunding our police. Nick was a strong supporter of our police and appropriately and properly funding the police department so that our neighborhoods would be safe. I see Common Council Member Joe Golombek in the audience, and I want to recognize Council Member Golombek, who also for a very long period of time served with Nick on the City Council as well. I left the Common Council to become a member of the New York State Senate, and then was fortunate to come back to city government as mayor. And Nick was still a member of the City Council. When he made the decision to retire, other members of the council, members of the community, and me as mayor did not want him to leave because he was that well respected. He was that good of a council member. We knew that there would be a drop off if Nick left. But out of his tremendous love for his mother, he retired at that time to take care of his mother, and we certainly understood his love for family and his deep love for his mom. I have a proclamation in his honor. I'm not going to read all of it, just a brief portion of it. Whereas it is the tradition of this city, state, and nation to pay tribute to those individuals whose dedication and contributions to their communities provide hope and inspiration for future generations. And whereas today we celebrate the rich life and legacy of Dominic J. Bonifacio, Jr., an outstanding man of character who touched the lives of countless people and contributed to the betterment of our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Byron W. Brown, Mayor of the City of Buffalo, do hereby proclaim August 24th, 2024, as Dominic J. Nick Bonifacio Jr. Day in the city of Buffalo, New York, and join my fellow citizens in celebrating his life and legacy.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Nick always told me in the years that he still living on the west side in the same house for many, many years, that anytime he had something to offer or something to say, he could call Mayor Brown anytime and would speak to him immediately. Thank you, Mayor Brown. It's my privilege to introduce our next speaker, a very long time friend of many of us in this room, including Nick. A lot of us, we played ball together for so many years, along with most of his brothers. Another Butler Mitchell boy, Butler Mitchell kid, our former mayor, Tony Maciello.
Thanks, Bobby. I still have some black and blue marks on my body from playing against you, but I'm sure you have a few of mine too. Can you speak in the mic because we're taping it? Could you hear me? All right, great. Thank you very much. And no, it's being taped. Oh, it's being taped, so I got to work. Okay, thank you. I usually give the orders, Chris. I don't get a chance to do this much, so when I get a chance, I take advantage of it. But certainly, thank you so much for being here today, and it's an honor for my wife, Kathleen, and I to be with so many of you who loved Nick Bonifacio and certainly understood what he stood for in our lives and the lives of many people on the west side of Buffalo. And certainly to Pastor Sam Chifa, thank you so much for opening up your church. Sam, I remember those baseball days like it were yesterday, and I remember your enthusiasm and passion and tenacity as an athlete, and I'm glad at least one Butler Mitchell alumni made it to the clergy. I'm not sure it was going to be you, but I'm glad somebody did. You know, Mayor Brown, thank you for your kind remarks. You know, Mayor Brown, though, left out a little piece of that intro. When I left the mayor's office, people started calling me the old mayor. I said, wait a minute here. Nobody's calling Tony Masiello old. So the mayor and I agreed that we would change the script, that from here on I would be the tall mayor, and he said to me, and I'll be the young, good-looking mayor. I said, Mayor, let me just say something to you. I come from the west side of Buffalo. I'm going to call you the young mayor, but I'm not going to refer to you as a good-looking mayor. You know, before I say my remarks, I'm getting a little sentimental here, but I remember my first day at the Butler Mitchell Boys Club. I didn't grow up around the club. I grew up on West and Bird. My playgrounds were School 19 and School 52. And I started to outgrow them. And I remember the first day I decided to go to the Butler Mitchell Boys Club. It was around 1960, 61. I think it was the summer before my freshman year at Cardinal Doherty High School. And I remember getting up that day, and I had a lot of anxiety because I was leaving my neighborhood. And I remember dribbling my basketball from Western Bird all the way up to Grant, and then dribbling all the way down from Grant and Bird to the Butler Mitchell. I did stop at the Villa, though, for a piece of pizza for 25 cents. And I would dribble going to the Butler Mitchell right-handed, and then coming home for dinner, I would dribble all the way down Grant Street left-handed. But I would always stop at the Villa for a piece of pizza. I remember the first day I walked in, the first remembrance I have of the Butler Mitchell Boys Club is the popcorn machine. The place just smelled terrific. But the athletes and the people there were just wonderful. But on behalf of the people of Buffalo, I offer my heartfelt condolences to Nick's brother, Joe, to his wife, Lenora, to his nieces and nephews, and to all of you, the Butler Mitchell alumni, who he loved dearly. Nick Bonifacio's legacy is a long and impressive one. Son, brother, coach, teacher, teammate, mentor, and friend. Nick led a life of devotion to his mother. Nick personally took care of his mother on a daily basis. He lived with her and took care of every need. Obviously, to everybody in this room, and everybody knew him well, Nick's mom was always his number one priority. To the Butler Mitchell Boys and Girls Clubs, Nick loved his kids, regardless of their economic background, gender, race, ethnicity, or ability. There was always a place for everyone on Nick's teams at the Butler Mitchell. He taught them to play the right way and emphasized strong fundamentals, teamwork, respect for the game and the opponent. And he honed their skills on and off the athletic venue. To the Butler Mitchell alumni, Nick was the glue who kept the ideals of the Butler Mitchell alive. He viewed the Butler Mitchell as an extension of his life and his family. They were his friends for life. Nick's devotion extended to West Side baseball. Nick, along with Tavi Avarisi, kept the West Side baseball alive and well for decades. Nick, who coached the boys, and Tavi, who coached the Ponytails, sacrificed so much to give young boys and girls the opportunity to play the game that they loved. And of course, Nick was devoted to the west side of Buffalo, the Butler Mitchell, Normal Avenue, Nativity Church, West Side Baseball, Butler Mitchell, 14th Street. Those roots shaped the persona and his spirit, and it will live on in the people he spent a lifetime teaching, coaching, and loving. As it was said earlier, Nick was a person of character. He was honest. He was never afraid to speak his mind. He would never tell you what you wanted to hear, but rather would tell you what the truth was, good or bad. He was humble. Nick never had airs. What you saw is what you got with Nick. He always cared about and rooted for the underdog and the disadvantaged. He was never flamboyant or boisterous, and he did what he could to help others feel good about themselves. Nick was loyal to his friends, to the kids he coached, to the Butler Mitchell alumni, and to the city of Buffalo, which he served so admirably. Nick was approachable. He never said no to any kid, adult, who needed help. Whether it was a pat on the back, a hug, a buck, or a shoulder to lean on, Nick was always there to help somebody in need. Nick was selfless. He never wanted or liked the limelight because he knew it was never about him. Some people are takers. Nick Bonifacio was the consummate giver. The constant theme throughout Nick's personal and professional life was service. He was the executive director of the Butler Mitchell, coach of West Side Baseball, interim director of the Buffalo Police Athletic League, treasurer of the Alumni Association, and of course, councilman of the great Niagara District. And he served with dignity, loyalty, and he strived to make sure that no kid was left behind. Now, my relationship with Nick when he became Niagara District Councilman was very rewarding. Nick was always approachable, knowledgeable, and certainly hardworking. And as all you know, he was relentless. He was not afraid to speak his mind or opine on issues, be they popular or unpopular. And he never shied away from a debate or a controversy. I often called Nick into my office to discuss issues of importance facing the city and the council. He never started or left my office with giving me a yes or a no. He always wanted to discuss those issues with his constituents and to see where they stood before he made any commitment to me. Nick took his responsibilities to his constituents seriously, and I'm sure that's not a surprise to anyone here today. As easygoing as Nick seemed to be, he was certainly no pushover. When the New York State Department of Transportation said the debate was over on the infamous Route 5 Boulevard Peace Bridge issue, Nick said, "We stand our ground. DOT can say the debate is over, but the debate hasn't even started yet. Because I have a problem with the authority telling us what they want. We need to tell them what we want." Typical Nick Bonifacio. When the Buffalo Police Department conducted a massive raid on the West Side, and the courts let most of the arrested drug dealers and users go free, Nick was irate and proclaimed the court's actions, and I quote, were a slap in the face to Buffalo men in blue. And I could tell you that nobody knew the Buffalo City budget better than Nick. He knew it inside and out, including how much was in every line of every service in the budget. And you want to know why he knew so much about it? He read it. You like that, Peter? Nick Bonifacio was a manifestation of the Butler Mitchell Boys and Girls Club. If you Google the Butler Mitchell's Our Story page, you will find a write-up about the history of the Butler Mitchell Boys Club. In that history, the author wrote that when Nick took over from Joe By, Nick was a direct prodigy of all the mentors who came before him. Nick's whole life was dedicated to the Butler Mitchell. And the author proceeded by saying that if you did an autopsy on Nick's life, you will find a little bit of everyone who preceded him. Well, today, I also believe that if you do an autopsy on Nick's life, you will find a little bit of everyone who came after him. Every kid he coached, mentored, taught, and loved. And in many of you who are in this church today. Rest in peace, our great friend. You deserve it.
If I had only known the last time would be the last time, I would have put off all the things I had to do. I would have stayed a little longer, held on a little tighter. Now what I'd give for one more day with you. 'Cause there's a wound here in my heart where something's missing, and they tell me that it's gonna heal with time. But I know you're in a place where all your wounds have been erased, and knowing yours are healed is healing mine. The only scars in heaven that won't belong to me and you. There'll be no such thing as broken, and all the old will be made new. And the thought that makes me smile now, even as the tears fall down, is that the only scars in heaven are on the hands that hold you now. I know the road you walked was anything but easy. You picked up your share of scars along the way. Oh, but now you're standing in the sun. You fought your fight and your race is run. The pain is all a million miles away. The only scars in heaven that won't belong to me and you. There'll be no such thing as broken, and all the old will be made new. And the thought that makes me smile now, even as the tears fall down, is that the only scars in heaven, yeah, are on the hands that hold you now. That hold you now. There's not a day goes by that I don't see you. You live on in all the better parts of me, until I'm standing with you in the sun. I'll fight this fight and this race I'll run, until I finally see what you can see. The only scars in heaven that won't belong to me and you. There'll be no such thing as broken, and all the old will be made new. And the thought that makes me smile now, and even as the tears fall down, that the only scars in heaven or on the hands that hold you now.
The next part of the program is we have some people, and when I say some people up here, I know you all feel the same. They want to say a few words about their relationships with Nick. The first person is one of our legendary alumni, Eddie Lazaro.
Looking out there, this is such a tribute to a special guy. Never.
Use the mic, Eddie.
Oh, such a tribute just seeing you there to Nick. And never have I spoken after two such illustrious mayors. So this is unique to me. But I'll be brief, and I'm going to try to reflect on my connection with Nick and the club. So we're all here to celebrate Nick. Years ago, I called him Mr. Butler Mitchell, and Nick cringed. He says, Ed, you can't say that, referring, of course, to all our mentors. But what else do you call a guy that embodied his whole mission in life to the Butler Mitchell? Mr. Butler Mitchell. What was the Butler back in the 50s and 60s? I had the good fortune of living a half a block away from Nate Bliss. And here's what I would do on occasion. Hey, Nate, you going to the Butler today? Or I get a call and say, Ed, I'll meet you at the Butler. The Butler became part of our identity. That's how significant the Butler Mitchell was. It was the shining light on the hill. It was a mission of hope for young boys on the West Side. It provided leadership and guidance to us. Tremendous facility, unequaled anywhere. We were fortunate enough, and they've already been mentioned, a lot of this stuff has been mentioned, but personally I have to reflect on this. We had 4 great World War II veterans. Paul Masana, Marine, Karen Battaglia, Marine, Joe Biondolillo, U.S. Army, and Ben Constantino, 82nd Airborne. We call them our mentors. Tom Brokaw had a better name for him, and he called them the greatest generation, and they were. The mass unit opened, oh, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Okay. Nate Bliss was our leader, and Nate led us 11 blocks, 3 to 4 times a week to Virginia and 10th, the original club. And we joined in 1949. Now, I had a standing argument with a guy named Joe Latempio. Now, Joe Latempio lived closer to Virginia and 10th than we did. And Joe's argument was, Ed, I joined the Butler way before you. I joined in 1948. And my reply was always, hey, Joe Lowe, the Butler did not have a daycare center. The mass unit opened in 55. In the 60s, I had the great luxury of working part-time under Joe By. Joe By was the unit director, and he had 2 stellar people working at the club and a lot of helpers. You had Nick Mortellaro in the gym and Nate Bliss in the game room. Nate was a wizard. He had 10 games going on all the time for the volume of kids we have on a Saturday. Assisting them, of course, were Paulie Fitz, John McGavro, Jimmy Master de Casa, Joe Zanzano, Bob Carnevale, and others. And all the time, there was a teenage kid watching, listening, and absorbing all of this. On a Saturday morning, Joe By would sit by the window in his office, and he could see the front door. And the club wouldn't open until 9 o'clock. But at 8:30, he'd start sitting there, and the line would form out the door of Massachusetts, 3 blocks long, single file. When he opened the club, there'd be Nick Bana checking off numbers of all the kids coming through the door. On a busy Saturday, as has been said, there'd be 450 to 500 young boys going through the club. Amazing. So Nick By joined in 55 and never really left Butler Mitchell at any time in his life. He became unit director years after Joe By, and he was forced out eventually by a change in the administration of Boys and Girls Club. And I won't get into the gory details. So Nick was involved in a number of jobs and things afterward. Tony Mastiello, the mayor, a smart man, a Butler Mitchell kid, realized he had an ace of trumps sitting in the Niagara district, Nick Bonifacio. It was slam dunk. I'm going to say something now. I do hope I don't affront either of the mayors or any other politicians here, but this is what I blurted out when Nick called me. So he calls me one night, and he says, Ed, the mayor wants me to run for councilman in the Niagara district. I don't say nothing. There's a big pause. And he says, Ed, did you hear me? The mayor wants me to run for council of the Niagara district. Excuse me, I don't mean to affront anybody, but here's what I said. Nick, you're too good a person to be a politician. And he did that. He roared. And of course, he proved me wrong because now he had leverage to help the West Side. And as he always did, individuals, agencies, families to the West Side. Eventually, when he left the councilman's position, he continued to provide love of his life to Butler Mitchell, working on the Butler Mitchell alumni, providing guidance and leadership. He was a Butler Mitchell man. He was one of a kind, Mr. Butler Mitchell.
Good morning. For you, those of you that don't know me, my name is Charlie Andolina, and I am honored to be able to share with you some of my memories of Nick Bonifacio. I, like many young boys, grew up at the Butler Mitchell on Massachusetts Street, where I developed many lifelong friendships. And one of those friendships was with Nick. Obviously, it started out as a person of authority and mentorship, but as time went on, it evolved into a true friendship. As a young man going to college, Nick must have seen something in me that made him feel I would be a good fit to help teach and mentor the ways of the Butler Mitchell to young boys and girls when he offered me a part-time job working at the club. It was a time in my life I will always cherish, and it was the beginning of our friendship. This gave me the ability as a young adult to see what a gift Nick had with connecting with kids from all different backgrounds and upbringings, and making them feel welcome and safe at a place for which a lot of them became a second home, and Nick became a positive role model and in some cases a father figure. As time went on, I graduated from college and was trying to move on to the next phase of my life and try to figure out my career aspirations, but I always stayed close to the club and Nick. I would often drive down Massachusetts on my way home and see Nick sitting in the window of the club, watching some type of sports, and having a few Mick Lights after a long day at the club with 100+ kids. He would stay after hours running out the gym to earn a few extra dollars to help out with various expenses for the kids. I always felt inclined to stop in and say hello and catch up and share what was going on with me and see how he was doing as well. Nick was very easy to talk to, and we shared a few good laughs, and looking back, I will always cherish those times. Nick was always a good sounding board and a voice of reason, which was invaluable to me as a young man trying to figure out my life. Our relationship continued to grow as I got more involved in the Butler Mitchell alumni, in which Nick was a mainstay and a leader. My friends felt it was our time to start giving back for all that we had gotten from the club. We were all proud to be Butler boys. And most of that came from our admiration towards Nick and the impact he had on our lives. Let's face it, Nick to us was what Butler Mitchell was all about. There were many wonderful men and women who worked along with Nick to make it a great place and keep us off the streets, but he was the guiding force. As time went on, Nick left the club, which I know was very difficult for him, but he ventured into city politics as Niagara District Councilman, where he was able to help take care of the neighborhood he loved and resided in for the rest of his life. I went on to become a Buffalo firefighter, but we always stayed in contact through the alumni. In 2011, Nick approached me about taking a more prominent role in the alumni as the next president of the organization. Nick saw something in me that I didn't, but I accepted the challenge and worked side by side with Nick and the rest of the executive board for the next 10 years. We accomplished a lot of wonderful things at that time. We met lots of great people, and this is also a time in my life that I always cherish. To know Nick was to love Nick. Nick always put others' needs before his own. He would do anything for his friends and the less fortunate. Nick lived a true life of service second to none. I feel today that I am a better person for having known him, and he will be dearly missed by so many people. Rest easy, good soldier. Your work here is done. You lived your life well. Love you, Nikki.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tony Formato, a longtime West Side resident, a member of the Butler Mitchell Alumni Association. Nick, they got me batting third. You know, with my speed, you never put me at the top of the lineup. So with that being said, you know, Nick was, I know him for 61 years of my life. I met him at age 7, and I recall I'm the youngest of 3 boys going into the boys' club, and my first encounter with Nick was at the infamous hot dog stand. I remembered, I look forward to that every Saturday, going in there with a couple quarters to buy hot dogs. And for years, it was Nick Head and Joe Head. Nick Head, Joe Head. I was probably about 12 or 13 before my oldest brother, David, corrected me. He said, Anthony, he goes, their name's not Head. Their name's Bonifacio. Well, I think a lot of you could laugh about it because that's what they were known as. So it took a long time for me to get over that. But, you know, Nick, as I remember him growing up as a young adult, or excuse me, as a youngster, watching Nick go through his young adulthood, being at the club, watching every move that the great mentors, Paul Masana, Nate Bliss, Nick Mortellaro, who's here today, Joe By. Nick, as mentioned by someone earlier, just engulfed everything that they did, how they reacted with children. And it made Nick the person that he was. He just felt a commitment to make everybody's life better. He saw the need that some of these children had coming from families with, you know, one parent. Nick was the parent. You know, although he never had any children, Nick fathered hundreds, if not thousands of kids. He was always there for them. I know from a personal standpoint, you know, he became a mentor to me, especially with golf. He and Joe By would take a number of us that are seated in this room today golfing 5 days a week. We'd meet him on Connecticut Street at Joe Hart's restaurant or the bowling alleys, hop in the car, drive up to Canada, play golf. So their day started at 6:30 in the morning. We'd be back at the club at 1. They'd work till 9 o'clock that night. Do it all over again on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. And then you had the big day of Saturday where hundreds of kids were in the building. So God bless those gentlemen for what they did for me as a young adult. In my early 20s, I became more of a friend to Nick. Obviously, just learning more about myself and some of the things that Nick was committed to with the Boys Club. And I joined the alumni and witnessed Nick's dedication and passion for kids. He just worked tirelessly and endlessly for the betterment of every kid that walked through those doors. Anybody that needed assistance, Nick could see it in their eyes, lend some words of advice, maybe a hug, whatever. But Nick was always there. And I know what I'm saying is redundant because everybody that's spoken before me today has said the same thing. So obviously it's a truism. I mean, Nick was there for everybody. His work through the alumni, with different funding falling off the map over the years, he was there making sure that the opportunities are still there for the young people of today that probably need it more than ever. As Chris mentioned before about the legendary summer camps, they were second to none, allowing kids to experience something, inner city kids, that they'll never experience. They didn't even know that world existed. I believe Chris even used that in his phrase. So, and luckily we have Christo Prince that Nick passed the torch on to hopefully keep that commitment going with the camp. As mentioned earlier by just about every speaker, Nick's associated with the Boys Club, the Common Council. All he wanted to do was serve people. He served the youth of the West Side. He served the elderly of the West Side. I mean, that's quite a legacy. And the PAL as well, his little internship there. So Nick was a servant to this community, and there'll never be another one like him. Somebody mentioned Butler Mitchell. If you opened him up, he'd bleed blue. I don't know if he'd Dodger blue or Butler blue, but it'd be one of the two blues. Both? All right, we'll go with both. Nick, I love you as a friend. We're going to miss you, but your legacy will live on. Thank you.
Well, I think that probably everything has been said that could possibly be said about Nick Bonifacio, and, well, maybe not, but I know that I will probably say some of the same things that other people have already said, but you're going to hear it anyways. First off, let me say that, I better put my glasses on, that I truly appreciate being asked to speak today about an amazing human being, Dominic Bonifacio. My name is Debbie Suggs. I'm a retired school teacher who had the pleasure of working with Nick at the Butler Mitchell for nearly 20 years. I came to the club never hearing or knowing about the existence of a boys' club and immediately was impressed with the quality of the programs, the services that were offered to the inner city youth on the west side of Buffalo for a mere $5 a year membership. Amazing times. In the beginning, it was difficult being the first female worker, to my knowledge, to ever set foot through the Butler doors. But then after the first few weeks, Nick's leadership and welcoming assistance, I felt right at home. It was an honor to be a small part of this group of professionals and carry on the rich traditions of this organization. I was excited to learn, to take on new challenges for myself, and to share my talents and strengths with the members. It soon became evident that not only was Nick the director of the club, but he was the driving force behind it. His leadership skills and his standards were nothing but the highest quality. Servicing, like they mentioned, on some days, as many as 500 members. How could one person do this, you may ask? Respect. He ran a tight ship, and I was proud to be on board. I learned quickly about the Butler traditions and was inspired by Nick's constant attention to every detail concerning the club inside and out. He was proud. It was his community. It truly was his second home. In my opinion, Nick was a man among men, a leader, one in a million. The Bible suggests that the term man among men symbolizes the roles of father and son being essential to the development of manhood. Yep, I'd say that's a perfect match for the director of the Boys Club. A leader, someone who possesses outstanding qualities, character traits, and achievements that make them a role model or a leader among their peers and an example for others. Nick was a leader. Or to quote Groucho Marx, only one man in 1,000 is a leader of men, but the other 999 follow women. Nick was virtuous. He worked hard, welcomed responsibility, practiced humility, self-discipline, and he seemed to have his priorities in order. He lived out his principles and values. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle believed that moral virtues or character traits like honesty, compassion, kindness, courage, integrity, fairness, and respect were things that a person develops partly because of their upbringing and partly because of their habit of action or practice. These ancient philosophers believed that one becomes virtuous by imitating another who exemplifies such virtuous characteristics. Practicing such ways in their daily lives, turning those ways into customs and habits by performing them each and every day, and finally connecting those virtues together. Nick had a loving family and friends, and many amazing role models that he learned to imitate. And it showed in everything that he did. Some people are talkers and others are doers. Nick was a doer. In the 20 plus years of knowing Nick, I can honestly say, without any hesitation, that Nick and the club influenced the lives of countless people for the good of humanity, myself included. Mother Teresa, he was not, but for many of us, he was Father Dominic of the Butler, lovingly known as the Head. His personal values and beliefs made him the man among men, one in a million. Winston Churchill wrote, "A man does what he must in spite of personal consequences, in spite of obstacles and dangers and pressures, and that is the basis of all human morality." Lastly, I'd like to share one of my top 10 Nick stories with you, as I remember it. As all of you know, there are many, and each of us has our own special something of a remembrance, but this was mine. Excuse me. The club was always there, obviously, for everyone, truly a cast of characters. But you must follow Nick's rules, club rules, or no Butler for you. It was 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, and Nick had just returned to the club from a weekly administrative meeting at the Babcock headquarters. It must have been special because he was fully dressed, head to toe, in his Sunday best dress clothes. Highly unusual for Nick. He was grumbling about how the meeting should have ended an hour earlier because he still had much paperwork to complete, and the boys' bathroom floor needed scrubbing because Gary had missed a few spots and it needed to dry before the midgets came in. He quickly changed from his dress clothes, which he often kept hanging in his office for emergency meetings, into his typical shorts, t-shirt, and sneakers. Once again, the Butler was his second home away from home. The midgets were already lining up at the door, waiting for 3 o'clock to open. And the doors opened, and what once was a quiet space became loud with all kinds of camaraderie. The midgets had taken over. This was their time to be at the club and to participate before they would have to leave at 6 o'clock. Well, 6 o'clock came around fast, and no one ever wanted to leave, but rules were rules. And Nick told me and Big John that his mom had made dinner waiting for him and that he would be back soon. So he left. He left Big John in charge, who most of the time was totally capable of holding down the fort. Well, Big John sheepishly entered the office to grab some extra tournament sheets. And in walks a longtime member, Bubba, strutting his stuff. He had swagger and he was always smiling. The conversation then begins after a high-five greeting, which was typical at the time. Bubba, what's happening, man? And then Bubba's eyes lit up like colored lights on a Christmas tree as he stared down at Nick's dress shoes sitting on the floor under the coat rack. Bubba, wow, those is nice shoes you got there, Big John. I like them. Big John, what size do you wear? Bubba, I don't know. Big John, try them on. If they fit, they're yours. Well, you guessed it. Excuse me, sockless and all, they fit. Bubba smiled ear to ear and began strutting his new shoes into the game room, showing them off to everyone. Not much later, Nick appeared on the scene from dinner, and he began checking in the punks at the front desk as they arrived. Bubba immediately approached Nick, high-fived him, and gave him his number, and pointed down at his new shoes, smiling the whole time. Nick did a double take, and then immediately looked at Big John. Big John said nothing. He just shrugged his shoulders, rolled his eyes, and we all laughed really hard. Nick wasn't upset. At that time, he must have quickly realized that those shoes meant more to Bubba than to him. Bubba then headed to the gym, and Nick yelled out to him. And when Nick yelled, everybody listened. Don't even think about sporting those shoes in the gym to play ball, Bubba. Not tonight. Nick was fair to everyone. He had his standards, and he tried to set examples. He had a heart of gold. Many may say he was the kind of guy that would give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. But in this case, it was the shoes off his feet. Lastly, to truly celebrate and honor Nick's life and legacy, let us all try harder to carry on these traditions, standards, and examples he set for us so that we can influence the lives of others as well. Nick has shown us how it's done, and it's up to all of us to imitate and make this world a better place because of him. Thank you, Nick, for everything. We will always love you and miss you. You were one in a million.
This is going to be very tough. I don't know how to begin. Since everybody here this afternoon is spoken well beyond their limit that we were told to speak of, I'll try to keep this brief as possible. As Tony said, he batted third. And you think third is tough. Batting last is atrocious. I've been listening to a lot of people here speak today, and I feel like it's happened to me again back in 2011 when I gave my eulogy for my father-in-law, and the Father Richard Zajac, the priest who knew him better than me, said all the things that I wanted to say. And believe it or not, it's happening again today. But I'll start out with this morning. We gather here to celebrate the storied life of my Dominic J. Bonifacio Jr., my dear friend and our Butler Mitchell alumni brother. I expected a lot of tears today, and I hopefully was hoping for a lot of laughs, and it looks like we've gotten them. That's very nice to see because Nick did not like tears. When I was visiting him in the hospital, I would cry all the time. And I would leave, and then one of the friends came up to me and says, tell Richie not to cry anymore. Tell Richie to hold his tears back. How can you hold the tears back for a man like Nick Bonifacio? That was a side one there. Getting back to the original thing. I got to get these. This tribute today is a testament to a well-deserved man. Nick and I grew up on the west side of Buffalo. We didn't go to the same grammar school. We didn't go to the same high school. We didn't even belong to the same church. We didn't even live in the same neighborhood. But by the grace of God, I thank Him for that, our paths crossed when both of us became Butler Mitchell members at 370 Massachusetts Avenue in the late 50s. Our lifetime friendship of some 65 years or so in Nick's legacy began at that time. Nick's journey in life was very fruitful and rewarding, not only rewarding to himself, but to all those who he came in contact with. Nick patterned his life after a Christian saying that it is more blessed to give than to receive. I believe most people in this audience today probably agree to that saying, especially visiting a casino. Nick was not a wealthy man, but to me, he was the richest person in the world. His generosity was not by monetary means, and if you needed it, he would have helped you, but something more precious. Precious time. I often wonder how this man had the time to do what he accomplished. He was very unselfish, and he devoted and dedicated his entire life for the betterment of his neighborhood and his community of the west side of Buffalo. His service to all was unmeasurable. But the kids were the most important to him, especially the Butler kids. He served his community and city of Buffalo in 3 different capacities. He started out at the Butler Mitchell Boys Club. He became Niagara District Councilman, and simultaneously with the other 2 as a member of the Butler Mitchell Alumni Association. Nick, beginning at the Butler Mitchell Boys Club, Nick never married. But as you all heard, he was a father figure to countless number of boys and maybe girls on the west side. He tutored, mentored, disciplined like them as a parent would do. He cared for each and every one of his kids. After leaving the boys club, he shortly worked at Rich Products until Tony Fanti, a friend of his, and maybe a couple others, hounded him to run for the Niagara District Council in Buffalo. He was completely against the thing, but eventually somehow they convinced him to run. And what a job he did, serving his community in another capacity. Being a member of the Alumni Association, he was the backbone, the Rock of Gibraltar of our organization. And he continued serving until his health problems, well, whatever. I made a mistake. It's tough. Well, anyhow, to me, he was our Freddie Mercury or Neil Diamond or Elton John. He was our rock star, superstar of our Alumni Association. He loved the boys, Butler Mitchell Boys Club. He also loved gardening and had a beautiful backyard garden with fish ponds, flowers, and so forth. He had a green thumb. His tomatoes, zucchinis, and eggplants were huge and delicious, especially his tomatoes. My wife and I were recipients of them every year. He loved his dogs. They were his bosom buddies, his trusted companions. And again, he loved his Dodgers. You see the sign down there, Duke Snider Way. He loved his Dodgers, he loved Duke Snider, and believed Duke was the greatest center fielder in New York City history, when at the same time Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays played for opposite teams in New York City. You can make the decision on that if you wish. Nick also loved his beer. If anybody knew him, he loved his beer. A fact many might not know here today is Nick spoke several languages. Oh, I guess somebody must know him. But he only spoke those languages when he had too many beers in his system. So who the hell knew what he was talking about? I didn't, and I was with him a lot of times. I like Mike Hall. Mike Hall, you were laughing at when I inducted Nick into our Butler Mitchell Hall of Fame. My best friend back there, a good friend back there, Mike, was gave me all the confidence in the world. He kept on laughing. But anyhow, Nick was my Clark Kent, who transformed himself into Superman. He became my hero. He became my hero. His passing has been devastating to me, and I'm sure a lot of other people in this room as well. Nick was a great speaker. If anybody went to any of his eulogies, he could take a person that he knew very little about and say the best things in his life about that person. I am mad at Nick Bonifacio for passing before me because I expected him to do my eulogy so he could make me look good. Well, I can't believe I'm getting through this, but I'm telling Tony Massiello is even smirking. But anyhow, I want to just say two quick things because we're way over the limit. This is sort of a human interest story, but I was in the hospital. We visited Nick all the time in the hospital. Bob Carnavelli and Ricky Mendeleri and myself. We were there almost every day. But I was there one day with Rick Gansey, and in came this young black girl. She had the uniform on, and I asked her, I says, well, who are you? Are you one of Nick's nurses? No, she said. I says, oh, because Nick had I don't know, he had, every time I went there, he had a different nurse. But so I figured she was one of them. Well, no, she wasn't. I said, well, who are you? Well, I work upstairs. And I found out that Nick Bonifacio was in the hospital, and I had to come down and visit him. She didn't know his condition, but she was there every single day saying hello to Nick, talking to him, because Nick, when he was Niagara District Councilman, did something, I'm not sure what she said it was, but did something that she was so proud that Nick helped her and her mother out. That's the kind of guy Nick was. Yeah. This is a very emotional one to me, and I leave it for last. Ricky Mendeleri was going through Nick's stuff, papers, whatever, looking through it, and he came upon a letter that I had written to Nick right after he was voted in as a Niagara District Councilman. The letter means nothing to anybody here. It's a personal letter, but the one thing it means to me is the last 4 words I said in that letter was, I love Nick Bonifacio. Why that is significant to me because every time Nick Bonifacio would talk to members of my family, my wife, my daughter, maybe my granddaughters, he would always finish the conversation by saying, I love Rich Peterson. On that note, may you rest in peace, God. Nick, rest in peace. And I'm going to say it one more time. I love Nick Bonifacio.
I would like to call up Councilman Joe Golumbek, who I think is the only person left on the council that worked with Nick for many, many years. And me knowing Joe, Joe is a lot like Nick, a real good guy and helping people. So,
thank you. That's actually the nicest thing that somebody could say is to compare me even remotely to Nick Bonifacio. I didn't meet Nick until 1999. I was running for council the same year that he was, and it was a funny story. He was friends with my cousin Dave Hokey that ran the Depew Lancaster Boys and Girls Clubs. And I ran into Nick. I think he was working at the Jubilee Center over on Niagara Street. And he told me that, he goes, and Mayor Mazziello, I'm going to get him in a little bit of trouble here. He goes, I hope you win. I'm telling everybody to vote for you. And I said, oh, geez, thank you. And he goes, my friend Tony Mazziello is with your opponent because he's the incumbent and everything. And he goes, but I'm with you. And I said, oh, gee, thank you. And he goes, I didn't like it that your opponent criticized you because you live in the same house with your mom. I didn't know about Nick and how he took care of his mom and everything at the time. But, I was just very honored that he was supportive of me at that time. we both got elected, and we sat next to each other on the council. And I got to know Nick very, very well. Our offices were also next door to one another, and we would talk to one another on a regular basis. And I have always been interested in history and neighborhoods, and I grew up in Riverside, hung out at the Town Boys and Girls Club. He, of course, was West Side in Butler Mitchell, and I would ask him questions, and he would share stories with me about his mom being born in Canada, his dad being a shoemaker, how tough it was growing up on the West Side, and the stories were very, very similar between both neighborhoods. The only difference was we had different vowel at the end of our names. You guys had O's, we had I's in Black Rock and Riverside. But a couple of stories about Nick. When he was majority leader, I would sometimes roll my eyes at some of my colleagues on the council. And I said to Nick, I go, how do you put up with the comments that so-and-so is making? And he goes, I can't hear out of this ear, and so I put it their way. And which I thought was hysterical. Another funny story about Nick was Father Angelo Chimera at Nativity called him up one day because during 10 o'clock Mass, there was a drug dealer listening to rap music and all this stuff. And I guess Father Chimera went over and asked him, told him to turn the music down. And the guy mouthed off to Father Chimera, so Father Chimera got in touch with Nick. Nick walked over, they called 911, the police got there, and one of the drug dealers said something snide to Father Ange, and Nick looked at the cops and said, are you going to do something about that? And they said, well, no, it's, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. He goes, well, I'll give you freedom of expression. He cold-cocked the dude that mouthed off to the priest. The two cops were not from Buffalo and did not know who Nick was. They didn't know what to do. Well, they ended up doing nothing. Towards the end, I think it might have been the last budget that he and I worked on together, he came back to the office, and I ran into him in the hallway, and he's all sweaty, and you could tell he was agitated. And I said, what happened? And he goes, I think this is going to be my last budget. I don't know if I can do this anymore. And I said, well, what's wrong? And he goes, well, I went home to have lunch with my mom, and we needed milk. And so I stopped at whatever the little store was to get some milk. And he goes, and he had that big green caddy car, whatever it was. I'm not a car guy. And he said, I get out of the store, and some guy parked 6 inches next to my door. I couldn't get in my car. He goes, so I was going to get in the passenger side, and I thought the principle of it, I'm going to wait. I'm going to talk to this guy. And the guy who said he was a punk, he was walking over to the car, and Nick's got his shirt on, his tie on, his jacket on. And he said, he goes, why'd you park so close to my car? And he goes, well, what are you going to do about it, old man? And Nick looks at him and goes, old man? He goes, you think because I got a shirt and a tie on that I won't? I'm not going to say, Pastor, what he said. But he said, you think I won't? He ends up chasing him a block down the street. He goes, I'm running after this guy. He goes, I'm going to kill him. And he goes, I'm running down the street, and I realized I got a shirt on, I got a tie on, I got a jacket on, I got brand new shoes, probably not the shoes you were talking about. Bubba still had them. And so he goes, I stopped, and I walked back to the car, had lunch with my mom, and here I am. I think it was the second last budget. I don't think that was the reason he decided not to run. But one last thing. He stopped by my mom's house 06 or 05. My dad was still alive, and he had some tomatoes to give to him. My dad was born in Poland. My dad had a huge garden in the backyard. There were tomato plants taller than me. And he went back there with these bags of tomatoes, and my dad took them in the backyard and gave him a bunch of Polish tomatoes. And so it was an even exchange. I'm sorry to be here under these circumstances. One last thing. He would always make fun of me, him and Vinnie Lavallo, because my favorite singer is Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons. And they said, you're lucky that you didn't hang out at the Butler Mitchell. You probably would have gotten beat up in the 70s for listening to doo-wop music. I was born a little bit out of time. But he did keep in touch with me on Facebook. He kept in touch with my mom. I lived upstairs, and my mom, she passed away 3 years ago. And I remember on her birthday, she said to me, I went down to see her, and she goes, Nick Bonifacio called me to wish me a happy birthday. She was the happiest woman in the world. Well, Nick, I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss your posts on Facebook. I'm going to miss talking to you. And the best thing, I think that one of the best things you can say about someone is he was a good guy and he was my friend.
Thank you, Councilman, and I know he adored you. He talked about you a lot to me. At this time, I would like to call up our president of the Butler Mitchell Alumni Association, Bob Doyle, for a special dedication.
Good morning, everyone. We all know how hard that Nick had worked, and he accomplished many great things. One of the things he was most proud of was the establishment of our own building at 28 Bauk Street, which would become our new home in 2013. With Nick's guidance and help from many alumni members, we made this possible. And we've got somebody better that can tell this story. Let's watch the video now.
Well, about 10 years ago, actually a little longer than that, we lost our home at the Butler Mitchell Club as far as the alumni is concerned. And we were meeting at Jubilee Center. Finally, Gary Krasinski gave us a room upstairs at the Town Boys and Girls Club, which we had to repair from scratch. Sand the floors, put in new ceilings, thanks to the help of Rich Peterson and alumni members. We made a nice room for ourselves. And we met there for quite a while. It was a nice location. It was part of our heritage to be near a Boys and Girls Club. And Town Boys Club at that time was running some great programs for the kids in their neighborhood. About 10 years ago, we asked Charlie Andolina to become president of our organization. And Charlie had a lot on his plate being a fireman, and Charlie accepted that position of president of this organization. Shortly after that, Bob Doyle accepted the position of vice president. And shortly after that, April Tempio decided to become secretary of our organization. And Charlie had visions. Believe it or not, he was one of our younger members. Us old guys were getting a little burned out. Our membership was down. We were still doing the things we wanted to do, raise money for kids and give out $20,000 a year to charities, but it was getting tougher and tougher for us. Even though we spent many, many hours at Games of Chance at Riverside Park and Games of Chance at the Italian Festival. But Charlie had a vision. He thought we should have our own home. And I second thought about it because I was close to the Boys Club more so than some of the other guys. And I had my second thoughts. But Charlie went on. And he found a building, 28 Bauk Street for us. And he did all the work, along with Christo Prince, to check out the finances if it was affordable for us. And we moved into the building, I think in 2013, the time Charlie was president. And to this day, the building and our house that we rent out has been nothing but a success. Actually, I look at it as an historic situation. I look in there as so much history of those pictures on the wall that I walk in there and somehow I feel that I'm walking into the Butler Mitchell. Because to me, that is the Butler Mitchell, 28 Belk Street.
What a wonderful video. As president of the Butler Mitchell Alumni Association, it is now my distinct honor and privilege to say it is only fitting and announce that the Butler Mitchell Alumni Association building will now be known as the Nick Bonifacio Butler Mitchell Alumni Clubhouse. Later in the year, we'll have a special ceremony with the rededication and naming of our building. Thank you all.
We are going to have a quick presentation to Nick's family. They are pictures of Nick's various times, and that picture is going to be part, real quickly, I don't mean to keep this going, but it's important. When Nick mentioned the 10 pictures that are on our wall, they are more than Hall of Famers. They're all legendary people in the last 50, 60 years of the Butler Mitchell and the Butler Mitchell alumni. Very shortly, Nick's picture will be up with those 10, so now it will be 11 special honorees, and that's right where he belongs. Thank you very much again, Joe and family. It was wonderful seeing you at a sad time, but thank you very much. Pastor Sam is going to make a few final comments.
What a wonderful morning it's been, hasn't it? I didn't realize that, amen, that I knew that Nick was a Dodgers fan. And as a longtime Yankee fan myself, I received word from the Lord that he has forgiven Nick for being a Dodgers fan and has converted him to the only fan that he should be, and that should be a New York Yankee. So there's forgiveness, right, Mike? All right. We've heard, and he was a better center fielder. We have heard witness in what a remarkable man Nick Bonifacio was, and I'm sure everyone in here today has a Nick Bonifacio story to tell. But one thing for sure, I could say that it was good to be in the house of the Lord today, to be a part of this tremendous testament to a man who lived an exceptional life. One of the things that was near and dear to Nick's heart was the annual Butler Mitchell reunion picnic. It was Nick's desire to see all the West Side friends get together once a year at this event. At this year's Butler Mitchell reunion picnic on Saturday, September 21st, there will be a special tribute to Nick, so you don't want to miss it. And be sure to pick up a postcard on one of the tables in the back foyer on your way out, which will give you all the details of the reunion picnic. So as we leave the church this morning, leave with a smile on your face and a joy in your heart as we continue to honor the memory and legacy of Nick Bonifacio. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. This concludes our services, our celebration for Nick Bonifacio. Bobby is telling me that there are refreshments that are going to be served in the lower level. You're welcome to join us if you can. God bless you. Thank you for coming.